Hi, this is Kristen here, and welcome to another process video. And today I'm working on day 23 of 30 Days of Sketches with Christy's Beautiful Life, and I am using the Art Options Spice collection from 49 Market. I have been hoarding this paper for a while, just because it was so pretty. I just was not wanting to use it and ruin it. So I finally did pull it out for this layout. Now the sketch shows a sunflower, kind of like I interpret it as like a die cut or something. And initially that's what I was going to do, but I decided it would be a perfect excuse to make a wreath with this collection. So I started out with that base paper there, did do some tea dye stain around the edge because there was like a natural break where the color was like kind of lighter on the inside and then went darker to the outside. So I just thought that that would be a good spot to create a wreath. And so then I am using the Art Options rub-ons, and I put pumpkins on either end, kind of catty-corner to each other or across from each other. And then I'm going to do the same thing with these florals. So, and if you ever use 49 and Market rub-ons, they are just such good quality. They have a lot of kind of depth and dimension, a lot of, just parts of it where it looks like it's faded and, like you've got paint splatters on it and things like that. So they really kind of layer it up. And so it makes it really easy to work with. Really, quite honestly, they're not, you don't have to like sit there and, rub them on like, where you're really like having to use a lot of force. Like they come off pretty easily. I do end up cutting off some pieces here that are kind of overhanging. You will see me pull those pieces back in because there were a few little paint splatters on that. So I always try to use, the pieces that I've got. So. Just getting this one placed where I want it. And again, there's a little excess here that I've got to kind of trim off. But that's what's nice about these collections too is a lot of time 49 Market, they'll have like paint splatters and pieces like that you can kind of cut off from like, the main part and reuse them elsewhere. They're just such good quality. I mean, and so there's kind of the base for my wreath. I'm going to fill in some of these little spots here, use some of these pieces that I had cut off the ends. And then the picture that I'm documenting is of my son at a pumpkin farm that we had gone to. And I ended up cutting out the stem to this rub-on just because I knew that part of this, when the ephemera and the paper that I was going to use behind the picture was going to cover up that stem, and I didn't want to cover it up. So these are a couple pieces of paper from the same collection, and I just kind of ripped them into strips. I'm going to tear off a little bit of that white excess. I do like a little bit of white on my when I tear paper, but sometimes it's, I don't like a lot, just like a real subtle if I'm going to leave it. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just pulling off the excess white. And the reason why I opted to do like kind of a strip behind the picture was because I didn't want anything that was going to cover up too much of the rub-ons. I just thought they were too pretty. I wanted to keep them as intact and uncovered as possible. So these lace pieces that you see me holding up are parts of the laser cut. And I don't remember if that was like Art Options laser cuts or what exactly. It was like a separate pack that I had purchased. So, and I had kind of piecemealed a lot of this stuff together because I was kind of newer to 49 Market, and so I was just kind of purchasing things that kind of caught my eye at that point. So, and I decided to do a tone on tone with this. And I'm just gonna kind of adjust this. I didn't like that the lace was looking kind of off kilter with that, so. And then I'm going to do the same thing with this purple piece. So I had actually, these were like actually longer pieces, so I had actually cut both of these in half and then cut them again. So the second page of the layout, you'll see where I actually end up using the other halves of these pieces to embellish. So they were actually pretty long pieces. And then I pull in some more 49 and Market ephemera. This is like a little stamp. Some leaves, some little sayings. And I don't like the weight on the edge of this, just because there's not, like, it's around the stamp is kind of like a stark white, whereas the background kind of has more of a beigey look. So I do end up taking some Distress Oxide tea dye, which is the same color that I used to kind of make that circle, and just put it on the white part of the stamp there. I'm just kind of playing around with where I want to put the stamp. Couple little pumpkins there. These are all little die cut pieces. I kind of had a hard time embellishing this initially just because, I don't know, the rub-ons were so pretty. I just did not want to interfere with them. And so sometimes if I'm really trying hard not to cover up pieces, sometimes I have a tough time. I decided that this little ribbon around to look like it's tied around the stem looked really cute. So I'm going to put that there. And I'm just trying to pull in some more ephemera pieces. These are like little die cut purple flowers, so. Now the original sketch I think had 4 pictures across, but obviously I wasn't gonna, unless I really like shrunk them and made them small, I wasn't gonna be able to get 4 pictures fit onto this. And this is kind of like a loose interpretation, I guess, of the sketch. My intention was to start out with like a flower die cut behind it, but then it kind of inspired me to pull this collection out finally. This favorite that you see there, that is another rub-on. It was a rub-on set from 49 and Market, and it was Art Options, and a lot of it was like phrases, kind of like perfect for titles and things like that. So kind of the same color scheme where it had like a lot of purple and some pinks to it. You'll see me pulling a couple leaves. I'm just tinkering around trying to figure out where exactly I want everything. And you can see I'm so like unsure. I'm like, okay, maybe this will look good. And I liked a lot of the stuff I was holding up. I was just being super picky. I feel like sometimes if a paper really intimidates me, and I don't know why it intimidates me. I think because it's so pretty. Sometimes I just have a really hard time figuring out what I'm going to use on it. And again, I wasn't wanting to cover up the pumpkins and the flowers, the rub-ons, so. I initially wasn't going to put a title really on this, but I kind of felt like this spot down here looked blank. But again, I didn't want to fill that spot up with too much because then I felt like it would, start to look a little too busy. So I opted for this rub-on. It says favorite. Again, just tinkering a lot. I mean, I just was so, like, I liked things where I put them and then I would be like, well, maybe they'll work better here. So it was a lot of tinkering. And I do like those pumpkins on either side of the picture, so I will leave those there, and then I've got to figure out something else down here by that pumpkin because I do feel like it looks a little naked. So I end up finding another stamp and then kind of like almost like a ticket. And I went ahead and glued that stamp down, and I was like, oh, dang it, it's got that really stark white. So I end up having to pull it back up so I can stain it with that tea dye, Distress Oxide. So thankfully the glue hadn't dried yet, and I was able to pull it up without ripping the paper or messing up the stamp. Put a little tiny, is that a pumpkin down there? And then I feel like this top part is a little naked too. So I had glued down that butterfly, and I decided I thought Fall Favorite would be like a kind of a good title for that. And that fit perfectly. Fall fit perfectly right in that little spot, almost like it was meant to be. So I end up pulling that rub-on up, and then I'll re-glue down the butterfly, which you can't even, I mean, it did pull up a little bit of the paper, but you won't even be able to see it by the time I get the butterfly glue back on. And I kind of felt like this part, so everything's glued on. I kind of felt like that spot right next to the pumpkins looked a little naked, like it needed a little something else. So I pull in this floral rub-on, and that was from the same rub-ons that had like all the phrases on it. There were a couple like little pieces like this on that, but it was mostly all phrases. I think like there might have been a pumpkin on there or something like that too. And maybe some butterflies, but and here is the finished layout. I think it turned out really pretty. I was really happy with that. I'd started off kind of like not being real sure what I was gonna do. I ended up tucking some leaves off to the right-hand side at the bottom of the layout. I don't think I'd shown that on film. And so this is the first one. I had switched out that purple sign for that more pumpkins, please, and ended up using some tea stain dye on that as well, just in that way it wasn't a stark white like some of the others. So I was kind of doing the same thing as like the stamp. A few more close-ups, and then I'll start on the second layout, which I think I had cut off a lot of the filming, so that part actually will be pretty short. So here is the second part of the layout. So of course on the second part of the layout from the sketch, you had flowers kind of on the right hand side, and then like a couple pictures, I think like 2 or 3 stacked up on the left. I wanted both flowers in on this layout, so I end up just deciding to split the difference and put the pictures in the middle. I'm using some of that purple paper that I had used where I ripped it into strips, and I'm going to back the photographs with that. And here you can see me pulling in that lace. So those are the other halves of that purple and that orange lace. So I'm going to get this adhered down and then put some lace on either side. So just barely peeking out from behind the backing piece there. And then I start to pull in some of the ephemera. This was a floral or leaves, and I end up splitting them in half just because it was kind of a big cluster and I didn't want, you know, something really big up there. So And then I'm just pulling in different embellishments. And here in a moment is when I'll just flip over to explaining what I do, because for some reason my camera just stopped recording. I think I ran out of space or something, I don't know, or it wasn't charged. So unfortunately I didn't get a lot of what I was doing, but I really just pretty much added rub-ons and some laser cut pieces and that, but I really felt like with this one I didn't need as much because of the florals on either side. And here you just see me pulling in some different laser pieces. And so unfortunately my camera pooped down on me while I was filming this, and I did not realize that. So I think as far as I got on this layout was I added, I don't know if I'd started adhering pieces back, but I added this bow, and then leaves back here. This is a rub-on. So I added all those. This is a die cut piece. And then the lace I added, so there's lace and lace there. This is a rub-on here. And then down at the bottom here, I had actually layered these pieces up. This is a rub-on. I did a rub-on here and then rub-on here, along with these little drops. So that is what I ended up doing.